Before I put forth any argument as to why I don't think Dean's confession in the episode Painted Black was a huge game-changing moment in terms of revealing anything about his sexuality or his feelings about Cass, I have to set a few records straight. I'm a Destiel shipper. If Carver decides to give everyone a happy ending, then I think Dean and Cass being in a committed relationship where they ride off into the sunset to go hunt some more monsters would be the best ending for both of them. I also think that Dean is about as straight as a rainbow slinky. Outright dismissing a queer interpretation of any character is at best intellectually lazy, but to think that the piles and piles of evidence that has been accumulating since season 2 that suggests Dean is bisexual as nothing more than the rantings and ravings of Slash fangirls is downright ignorant. You know what else shows intellectual laziness? Saying you're reading too much into this. The thing is, guys, unlike reality, fiction has to make sense. Storytellers deliberately put in hints to foreshadow events in their story. It's one way to build up to a significant event or the climax. Everything in a story almost always has a deeper meaning, unless it's like the cheese guy in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode Restless, who Joss Whedon created specifically to mean nothing. So I would never stand in the way of anybody reading whatever they wanted into Supernatural. I can understand, though, why people are getting excited about this on an emotional level. Being a Destiel shipper in a lot of respects isn't easy. There's an extremely loud and cruel minority in the fandom who seem to take special pleasure in being the worst assholes possible to Misha Collins, Castiel fans, and Destiel shippers. Some of the actors and lesser crew members have said some painfully ignorant and extremely hurtful things mocking us. Many of us have been shipping Destiel for years, even some way back in Gambles or even Kripke's era, where the prospect of the confirmation of feelings from either Cass or Dean, let alone an actual relationship, was as real a possibility as the giant scorpions Ben Edlund talked about in the end commentary showing up and attacking a major U.S. city for Dean and Sam to fight. As in, it would be majorly awesome, but it would also never happen. And I also know there are many Destiel shippers who are queer and have projected a lot of their feelings about being non-straight people in a bigoted society onto the show and the fandom. So I get why every piece of substantive subtext can feel like a hard-won victory, but there is honestly more than one way to analyze this scene. So let's watch it, and I'll talk about why this is not the smoking bisexual gun. Dean goes into the confessional and talks to the priest and makes up this story about a woman named Gina in an attempt to bring forth the ghost who the boys have figured out is going after men who are unfaithful. Dean says he lets women think he has a future with them, but then cheats on them, which Dean has actually never done. He's been undoubtedly callous with many of his one-night stands, but when he's in an actual relationship, he's faithful. Dean is projecting his mask, his macho swagger, which he uses to distance both other people and himself from his feelings. Anyway, then the priest says that he should try some soul searching, and that's when Dean says this.
What have I said? I didn't want to die. Yet. That I wasn't ready.
Okay, this is actually a big deal. Dean's character is so heartbreakingly frustrating because he values himself so lowly. He thinks he's only worth anything as long as he looks out for Sammy and saves people. So for him to actually admit that he wants a life for himself that's more than hunting is a groundbreaking moment for his character. But it's not groundbreaking to the point where it reveals anything about his sexuality or his feelings about Cass in a textual way.
I don't know. I mean, there's things, there's people, feelings that I want to experience differently than I have before. Or maybe even for the first time.
I still think this is pretty vague. Dean could be talking about how he wants to be a better friend to Cass, Charlie, and Jody, and a better brother to Sam, in addition to wanting to have a lasting romantic relationship. I do think he is talking about romance when he says that he wants to experience things differently, or even for the first time, because I don't think he was ever in love with Lisa. Their relationship consisted of Dean making himself who she needed him to be, and Lisa being as understanding as possible, because Dean loved Ben way more than any other man she had been with. Even if Dean is talking about romantic love, I don't see how what he's saying can only mean that he wants to be with men, or Cass specifically. Do I think someone can read it that way? Certainly, but I fail to see how it's the only way. If and when they actually pull the trigger on this whole Destiel thing, it will be in a piece of text that's explicit and most likely at the end of the show. Supernatural's gas in the tank is man tears, and Dean getting into a relationship with his best friend is too happy an occurrence for that to last, and I doubt they're going to kill off Cass because he's too popular for that to happen. So I ask my fellow shippers to have perspective and patience. I know neither of those things are easy to have with all we've already been through, but I think it's important not to become as narrow-minded as the people we rail against.